Welcome to The Sarah Scoop Show. It's time to get the scoop with Sarah.
I'm Laurie Berkner, and I write and perform kids' music and do lots of different things for kids, have picture books and write music for musicals, make videos, and write stories. Well, I started a music specialist for preschoolers, and I started writing songs while I was working with them. And eventually, and I already loved performing and singing. I had done a lot of just like musicals in high school, and I was in bands and stuff. But and I was writing original music at the time. But when I started writing music for the kids that I was teaching, and that turned into the career that I have now via a lot of different twists and turns. What ended up happening was I was writing music for the kids in my classes, and the parents started asking me what these songs were that their kids were singing at home that they had never heard before. So I made my first recording, which was a cassette tape. It was a long time ago. And I sent that home I actually sold them for $5, I think, to the parents so that I could cover my costs. They started asking for them to give out to friends and to give out as birthday party favors. I was also sometimes singing at their kids' birthday parties. They would ask me as their music teacher, will you come and sing a little bit at the party, and we'll make it into a theme. So that actually, suddenly people started sharing that first cassette with each other. It was... Surprisingly, it sort of grew very organically from there. I ended up selling it. I ended up having people who listened to the cassette want me to do some videos with them. Then I ended up having videos on Nick Jr. It was Noggin at the time. In between there, I ended up on the Today Show because one parent who when I was doing CDs, had a CD from a party that I had done, and she asked me if I wanted to be on the Today Show. I mean, it's just like these things that kept kind of happening, mostly because the kids were really just enjoying the music. And so it's just eventually it became something that I was doing full time, and I stopped teaching and spent all my time writing and recording and making videos. It wasn't my goal necessarily to be a kids performer, or a person who wrote music for kids and performing with them and for them, but I did want to be a musician. And when I realized that as I was doing those things, because when I first started, I was still in other bands, and I was playing like bars at 2 a.m. with an all-female cover band on Long Island, and like different stuff like that, where I was working really hard to do what I thought I needed to do to become a musician. And at the same time, the kids' music was sort of growing without me working very hard at it. I worked hard at the music, but I wasn't trying to make it grow. And what instead happened was that people were responding to it so much that there were all these opportunities that opened up. Yeah, that's actually something a lot of people ask me is like, how did you do that? And what's the best way to do that? And I really think that I was just following both what was fun and what worked, right? So it was like I had an idea that I wanted to be a musician, and this was not the way I imagined I would become a musician, but it was fun, and it was also working. So I kept doing it and kept following it rather than, I guess I could have fought it. I could have been like, no, I want to be a rock star or whatever, or on Broadway. But this was what I seemed to do well and what people responded to. So yeah, I just kind of followed it, and that made it all turn out the way it is now. All the time. I mean, that was exactly how I started writing. One of the first songs I ever wrote was We Are the Dinosaurs, and it was essentially that I didn't know what to do with them that day because they were not having Old MacDonald, and everybody was kind of like antsy. And I finally just said, well, what do you guys want to sing about anyway? We can sing about whatever you want to sing about. And one kid said, dinosaurs. And then all the rest of them went, yeah, dinosaurs, yeah. And I said, okay, everybody get up, start marching. We're going to march like dinosaurs. And I just started playing a minor chord, and I just made up this song, which I don't even think it was exactly, I'm sure it was not exactly the same as what it became, because now it's sort of this, it is sort of one of the more classic songs that people associate with me. But at the time I just made up something, and they started to get kind of crazy and excited and yelling and roaring. And we were marching, and then I said, okay, stop and eat your food on the ground. And then that became the next line, and it was quiet, and they calmed down and they ate their food, and then we got up and we marched again. And so, I mean, that entire song, so many of them were inspired directly from kids or things that I heard people in families saying to their kids. Song in my tummy, I literally had a kid come into my class one day and say, Laurie, I have a song in my tummy and it wants to come out. And that's the first line of that song. I've got a song in my tummy and it wants to come out. I got a song in my tummy. And just, I totally agree. Kids say the most beautiful, lyrical, creative, funny, wonderful things. And I am quite a thief when it comes to making music, because I listen to what they say and I use their ideas all the time. So we just released one called Listen to the Sounds, which it's interesting because I actually wrote it quite a while ago. It's a song really just about listening generally, but listening to breathing, our own heartbeats and sounds around us. And I was definitely like doing a lot of meditating when I wrote the song, but I also really loved the idea of writing a song where I could help kids just take a pause, take a breath, and notice something outside of themselves, and then also notice something that's actually inside of themselves, and realize like that our breathing and our heartbeats, like that's who we are. Kind of, it's part of our essence. It's like a representation of certain of our souls, our love. I just felt like it would be a really beautiful thing for people for kids to connect to that side of themselves. And I didn't really have a lot of other songs where that kind of listening took place. So I wrote that one, and I had recorded it a couple of years ago, and I had set it aside because I wasn't ready to put it out on my last album, and planned to put it out on my next album. And then the whole thing with COVID happened, and I realized like, oh, this would actually be a perfect time to release this song, and I need this song. That's actually usually what that's what I realize when I want to like release something or write something, is when I'm thinking, oh, I really need this right now. And I think about what I might feel like if I were a kid and if I would have those same feelings. So it felt like a good time to release that one. And then the one after that I wrote much more recently, and I had all of these I had actually written before coronavirus kind of came into my consciousness. And the second one is called Jumping Jack. And that's another thing that I realized I feel like I imagine a lot of kids need right now. We all need right now in a lot of different ways, which is just, it's jumping. It's jumping like a jumping jack, doing jumping jacks, jumping forward, jumping back, just using your body, exercising, feeling that like wonderful feeling of being alive because we're moving. And the third one is called Beautiful Light, which also felt like the right time to release that. That was one that I had written really thinking about each human being being a beautiful light in the world, that we all have the capacity to really bring something beautiful into the world, and to see that in each other. So yeah, it kind of worked out timing wise that those were the things on my mind. I feel really happy about releasing them all right now. I definitely, when I sit down, I'm thinking about, I mean, there are a lot of messages, but maybe, I don't know if there's an overarching one. I guess just that I feel like teaching kids to love themselves is really important. And maybe I don't have to teach them that, actually, it's sort of the wrong way to say it, but to support them in loving themselves, to give them the space to do that, to allow them to love themselves in all the different ways that they are. And I think when we can do that for ourselves, then it's so easy to be able to do it for other people as well. And then that is what provides connection and just positivity as human beings. So, I mean, connection is a really big part of what I feel like my own mission is to connect to kids, is to connect to other people and to help them to connect to each other and help them connect to their own feelings. So, but I think the core of that, like, we accept our feelings if we accept ourselves, right? So if we really sort of grow up feeling like it's okay to love myself, and in fact, it's a good thing. So I think that may be the underlying message. Is like, yeah, you're worth being loved, and you can do that for yourself. Yeah, I mean, I love recording. I really love being in the studio. I think I really love being in the studio working with another person, because I've been doing it a lot kind of remotely now, and I still really like it. But it's really fun to be in like someone else's studio who knows who's working the board, and like just be able to kind of have ideas and have that person help shape them with me and like create something together. But I do enjoy the process of writing. I like a lot of parts of my job. I like the performance, and I really enjoy also meeting the kids after a show. That's something that I miss about not being able to perform live, and really being able to like hear and see the audience. I mean, I just stopped them, but I did almost 50 Facebook Lives since the quarantine started. And so it's been a lot of performing, and I can see the people's comments scrolling, and I get comments afterwards, but it's a very different experience to do that. It's like performing into a camera, much more like doing television than it is doing a live performance. And with the added like stress of it actually being live. So I'm getting both. But I'm not sure I'm answering your question. I really like the live aspect of the performing a lot, like the interaction with the audience. That's a very special part of what I have been able to do. At the time, it was because they were just starting their channel Noggin, which eventually became Nick Jr. And one of the original creators of the channel, Amy Friedman, had found out about me because her nieces were big fans. And we actually met like a number of years before Noggin even became a channel. And we sort of talked and kept in touch for a lot of years, and she kept saying, I just feel like your music would be great with what we're trying to create, but I don't really know exactly how I'll use it yet. And eventually they were developing ideas for a couple of shows, one of which became Jack's Big Music Show, which was the show that I was on with my band for the 2 seasons it was on air. And prior to that, while we were filming the videos for that, or just before we filmed the videos, actually, she said, why don't we just film some, we were doing a tester, why don't we film some and we'll just put them up on the channel as interstitials, which are like, if you don't have commercials on a channel, they put in little breaks. And so we were those breaks some of the time. And the reaction was like explosive. People loved it. And I was suddenly like, everything I was doing multiplied by 10 times the amount of people who knew what was going on with me and, looking for my music. So they decided, well, why don't we actually make you a bigger part of the show than we thought we were going to. I was just going to be in an episode or two, and they were going to do a lot of musicians. So I ended up being sort of like, our band was sort of like the house band. And we were in every episode, and then they had an additional different musician along with us, or a different band along with us. So they had 2 in each episode, and we were always one of them. So making those videos was a lot of fun. It was the very first ones. I was pregnant early on, and I had a lot of morning sickness, so they were sort of hard to make, but they got made and they got out there, and and there were good people working on that show. And I don't actually work directly with them anymore. That show isn't on the air anymore, so my videos aren't on Nick Jr. at this point, but I had a lot of good years working with them, which was really nice. Right, so actually all the books, well, let's see. All the picture books that I have out are, each one is the lyrics to one of my songs. So there's We Are the Dinosaurs here. Pillow Land is another one that I wrote. This is We Are the Dinosaurs. And the third one I recently did was Monster Boogie. And then I had a couple other ones I had done with Scholastic a number of years ago, but they're not in print anymore. And so all of those picture books, I basically just worked with my editor, and the editor found an illustrator, and we built more of a graphic story around the songs, and then had the books put together, which was really fun. It's exciting to like see the songs end up having a bigger, more of a story behind them, because they weren't necessarily stories. They're more just, I like to write a lot of like fun wordplay and movement and that sort of thing, and it doesn't always end up in a story. So to turn it into a book was exciting for each of those 3 songs. And then I also but I did also write a bunch of stories using my songs more in like a musical format. So the song in Story Kitchen, which is an Audible original, is all audible. It's an all recorded series of chapters of stories that take place in a magical world called Juniper Fields, that I go to with my friend Thelonious Pig from my kitchen. So we started in the kitchen. We invite in the listeners who are our kitchen kids. We start to make something together. It brings up the idea of a story that I might remember, Juniper Fields, and we go to Juniper Fields and the story gets told. And there, all the characters from my songs are the characters in the stories. And I tell a story there with songs woven in. And then when it's over, we come back to the kitchen and finish what we're making and finish whatever issue came up along the way. So that's more where I actually wrote the stories separately and used the songs just to support the stories themselves. Yes, a couple places. Doing the White House Easter egg roll. So in front of the White House, that was exciting. That was some years back. And also I performed at Carnegie Hall. We did our show there once, and that was also one of those crazy times, like, what am I doing here? Yeah, I guess the 2 other places I would say was performing in Central Park on Summer Stage. That was something that I used to go to when I was younger, and I would it was exciting to actually be on that stage. And then also at Lincoln Center at Avery Fisher Hall, which is not even called that anymore, I don't think. But those were all places that I was surprised to be in, or I had like spent time going to as an audience member. Actually, I'll say one other thing, which is that I grew up in Princeton, and I used to go to shows all the time at McCarter Theater. And now I play there almost every year as an adult. And I remember like fantasizing when I was a kid, like, oh, I wonder if I'll ever be able to play a place like this someday in my lifetime. And so, yeah, all of those, I feel very lucky to be able to, actually bring music to people in the places that inspired me when I was a kid. Chipmunk at the Gas Pump. It's from my most recent album called Waiting for the Elevator. I was driving down the tiny road into a tiny town. My car was low on gas, so I decided to slow down. I saw a station up ahead right down the tiny street. I drove my car, it wasn't far, about 100 feet. I pulled up to a tiny pump and switched the engine off. I didn't see a single soul, just heard a little cough. So I looked left and I looked right, but no one was around. Then one last time I turned my head, and that's when I looked down. I saw him jump, jump, pump it up, a chipmunk at the gas pump. Jump, jump, pump it up, a chipmunk at the gas pump. Jump, jump, pump it up, a chipmunk at the gas pump. Jump, jump, pump it up, a chipmunk at the gas fancy tie. His sneakers both had glitter and his socks were both knee-high. He had a snazzy chipmunk stripe that ran right down his back, and every pocket held a tiny acorn he could crack. Jump, jump, pump it up, a chipmunk at the gas pump. Jump, jump, pump it up, a chipmunk at the gas pump. Jump, jump, pump it up, a chipmunk at the gas pump. Jump, jump, pump it up, a chipmunk at the gas pump. Pumpty pump, then we jump, jump, chipmunk. Pumpty pump, pump, pump. Pumpty pump, then we jump, jump, chipmunk. Pumpty pump, pump, pump. He was a very good worker who was fiercely independent. He made fine living as a gas station attendant. But Harry loved the earth, so he called all of his relations. They helped him turn that pump into electric charging stations. I asked him for a job, and Harry told me I could stay. That chipmunk has become my friend, and now there is no way I ever will forget the very first day I saw him jump, jump, pump it up, a chipmunk at the gas pump. Jump, jump, pump it up, a chipmunk at the gas pump. Jump, jump, pump it up, a chipmunk at the gas pump. Jump, jump, pump it up, a chipmunk at the gas pump. A chipmunk at the gas pump.
Thank you for watching The Sarah Scoop Show. Head to sarahscoop.com for more.